Okay, let's talk about the house. Crime reactions. Disclaimer. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so as you guys know, 1122 King, the house where the Idaho student homicides took place, was completely torn down. And it's really difficult having a brain that can actually look at both sides, because I totally understand both sides of the argument about whether this was a good move or not, or whether this happening actually truly mattered to the case and how this can turn out or not. Okay, I can see both sides. And the problem is that it isn't just the house that's one huge contradiction in this case. The entire case itself feels like a huge contradiction, probably one of the biggest ones that I've ever tried to, like, I don't know, digest in my brain. Okay, so I just wanted to come out and I guess just explain the reasonings why I see both sides and why, both sides make sense. But then I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to tell you straight up, I think the house should have stayed. Like, regardless of everything else that I'm going to say in this video, the trial has not even been officially scheduled yet. And it's a crime scene. It doesn't matter to me whatsoever. And honestly, in the actuality and reality of things, just because something is released from evidence doesn't mean that its history and what it actually is goes away. Okay. Just because it was released does not mean that it is no longer a crime scene. And that's a comment that I'm seeing like everywhere, is that, oh, it's no longer a crime scene. It was released. Okay, well, just because it was released doesn't mean that 4 lives weren't taken in that house. That doesn't go away. So regardless, it was still the crime scene for a huge case that is being looked at all over the world that we haven't even had a trial scheduled for. That's important to me. That's important to a lot of people, even people that know the laws and know that this was, not a big deal because of the way that the paperwork is being filed. Okay, even those people say, but it should have stayed till trial. Okay, it should have stayed till trial. Now, one of the arguments that has been brought up in this was the security for the house. The university shouldn't be obligated to pay for security because it's not technically evidence anymore, because it's been released and they've done all these 3D things, which we're going to talk about that too. So then who's paying for the debris to be guarded? The university? Because that was being reported during the live of it being torn down, that the debris of the house is being kept somewhere outside of Moscow. I don't know exactly where. I'm sure somebody has found that out by now. But that the debris is going to be guarded. So you can pay a salary of someone and pay a security team, whether it be electronic surveillance or people actually being there or whatever. There is a fee. There is money being paid for this trash, this useless to the case trash, to be guarded. Why can't you just do the same thing with the house standing? That's contradictory. Now, there was also the argument that because of all of the chemicals that had been used in the house and because of the abatement that was done where it was treated for asbestos, which, if you guys don't know that, this is what it looks like when that kind of thing happens. So not only were we being told that pieces of wall and flooring and all these other things of the house, actual pieces of the home itself, were being removed and taken in for testing and stuff like that, this stuff also happened whenever the asbestos was treated. So this is where we get both sides of the argument about the scanning, the 3D scanning, okay? So we know that they did it a long time ago. We were told before they even had the trial date, I think, set for October, that they had done the Pharaoh scanning and that they had this really high-tech 3D model that they were going to be able to use in court, and they acted like it was just like top of the line, creme de la creme, okay? Well, then a few weeks ago, they go in there and they do a second round of Pharaoh scanning after all of those physical pieces of the house and all of the abatement stuff is done. Why? That's why like them claiming, oh, they tore that whole house apart. Nothing about the inside is the same as it was the night of the murders. I understand that. Duh. I mean, I get that. Okay. Well, then why did they feel the need to go spend how many thousands of dollars on a second Pharaoh scanning? I understand it was a more quality camera. We've gone over this already. But the question is still not being answered for me. I don't understand what the point was if it's so useless because of the way that it was on the inside compared to the night of the crimes. Why spend all of that extra time and tax dollars doing the scanning? It doesn't make sense. And if it's so useless, and the defense and the prosecution both believe that there's nothing left of evidentiary value in that house, then why did they both end up walking back through it, taking more photos and taking more measurements and doing more things just a few weeks ago? It can't be both useless and worth all this time and billable hours. It can't be both. Now, there's also the argument about the university, and I don't even want to get into the whole thing about Scott Green and his history. I know there's a lot of channels that talk about that. I'm aware of it. I know that he lived in that house whenever it was, I'm pretty positive that it was way before any of the additions were added on, because this is not the original stance of this house. This house was remodeled, and there used to be like a outdoor detached garage or something like that that kind of looked like a shed from what I can remember from older like Google photos or whatever of this area. That's not there anymore. So there's been some work done to the house, and its structure has changed since Scott Green, the now president of the University of Idaho, used to live there as a child. So I know that there's all of those things, and I know about the LLC, and I know that there's a lot of sketchy things going on when it comes to that address in multiple varieties, okay? But what we don't know is if any of those things are actually related or had anything to do with what happened that night. And we can't just sit there going crazy over every single one of them, because the answer is only going to be one. It's only going to be one thing. The answer to this is only going to be one thing. Now, we don't have enough to sit here and act as if we can pinpoint exactly what that one thing is. We don't. No one can. And anyone who can claim at this point in time that's out here on YouTube that they know exactly what happened and exactly the reasoning and exactly why and exactly how, no, they don't, because we don't know, but maybe 40-ish% of what's actually going on here. There could very easily be more. Okay, there could be more DNA in other places. There could be. I don't believe there is. Just saying, in my opinion, because remember that little disclaimer at the beginning, okay? My opinion, just from what I've read and the way that things are being presented and the wording that's being used in certain documents, it seems as if the DNA on the sheath is the strongest piece of evidence that the prosecution has. And I understand all of the other circumstantial stuff, okay? I'm not stupid. Just because I'm questioning things doesn't mean that I don't understand how very easily it could be that Bryan is the very guilty person and the only one that did this, okay? I get that. But when there's too many things that have open-ended answers and literally none of them are being validated, verified, and we just keep having more crazy ass things happen, you can't just sit back and act like this is a normal situation. And I know that a lot of people are looking at Delphi and like taking comparisons to the sort of like circumstantial things that are going on with Richard Allen and when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. Yeah, there's some things, but there's also some things from Kohberger's past that make him being the guy, actually kind of make some sense. But just because somebody has had a mental, a bad mental health history or drug use in the past doesn't mean that they're the person that did something like this just because they happen to be the suspect. What matters is the facts. What matters is the truth. And the truth is that besides something that could have been picked up literally anywhere, there's no actual proof that Bryan Kohberger was in that house, which is a reason why a lot of people think that the defense are like okay with them getting rid of the house, because if he wasn't there, what's it going to prove? Like if the whole case was based on the fact that he's innocent if he was in that house, they would be fighting to keep it, right? But the whole point is that he's not supposed to have been there. He's fighting for the fact that he's innocent of doing this. So, yeah, there is no point of them keeping the house if his entire fight was, I wasn't there, it wasn't me, you know?
Hey guys, okay, so it's been a few days since I recorded this one, and I should have actually put this in here originally. So while I'm listening to myself say what you just heard my past self say, my now self is also realizing that, to be fair, because I know this is already something that other people are, thinking, that have Bryan completely guilty, okay? This is their assumption of this, and it's not a wrong assumption, because there's a possibility that what they're thinking is actually what could be the reason why the defense isn't fighting this. If there's a possibility that Bryan is actually the guilty party here, wouldn't you want your biggest piece of evidence to be destroyed? And wouldn't it be like the perfect scenario for you for it to not happen because of you? For it to happen because the people that want to put you on like death row are the ones who want to get rid of it for some reason, and you're able to say okay and not look like the bad guy even worse than you already are? Yeah, I mean, I understand it. It can go, that's the biggest issue with this entire case. Almost everything can go two ways, sometimes even three.
Another question that I had is, just because the defense team isn't fighting for the house, is there a way that Bryan Kohberger might be able to use this later on if he is found guilty to, appeal, maybe go back to trial, call a mistrial? Is there something that he could use this for later if he is actually found guilty? Basically, could he say that he wasn't represented correctly, like ineffective counsel by Ann Taylor, because Ann Taylor didn't do more to save the house? Now, again, if you go back to what I just said about how the whole point is that he's not supposed to have been in there and done this to begin with, so saving the house really wouldn't do anything for Bryan in the first place, then all of that is null and void, okay? But just in case, if he wanted to try to use the house later on as a reason for appeal for a guilty charge, still claiming that he's innocent because something in the house, like maybe evidence that was missed by whoever he would be deeming to be the actual perpetrator, okay? And now that can't be looked for or anything like that because the house is destroyed. And, just like Deacon Salvis's claim, and like a lot of people claim, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And there's a lot of different things that could go on here. But I asked the question about, is there a way that Bryan could use this later on for any sort of appeal or anything on Twitter or X or whatever. And I tagged a couple of people in it, and Andrea Burkhart was the first one to respond. And this was her response. This was my question. Serious question. With both sides seemingly agreeing that the house was useless, can Bryan use it being demolished as a tactic later on in the game? Or does their agreement make any moves null and void? And this was Andrea's response. I don't see a clear path for appeal. You appeal decisions that were made, but not ones that weren't, and he never asked the court to order the house seized. So even if it were an error to release the house, he didn't preserve the error, and that means it can't be raised on appeal. This is where I asked about the possibility that he could maybe file something claiming that there was ineffective assistance of counsel on the defense team's part. Her response was that there was a couple of problems with the IAC here. First, ineffective assistance of counsel does not work for strategic decisions. You have to prove your attorney didn't know what they were doing, not that they made an informed judgment call not to pursue certain leads. That's probably not viable here, but also you have to prove prejudice to win an IAC, meaning the lawyer's bumbling is what cost you your case. To do that, you have to prove what would have been in the house and why it would have been dispositive to the outcome. Very hard to do that when the evidence has been destroyed. Okay, that's why I was kind of questioning that. And again, the only thing that Bryan can really fight is him not being the one that was in the house that night, right? So if he's not supposed to have been in there, then there would be technically nothing in the house that would be of use to him. I understand that. I get it. I don't like it because to me the house should still stay until after trial, but it is what it is. And now it's just too late. But yeah, like I mentioned, I can see both sides. I understand it. But to me, I just it just feels wrong. It feels wrong that it's gone before we even have a trial date. I agree with the Gonsalves family on that. And by the way, did you guys happen to notice this? So whenever the demolition was over yesterday, I put together like a 2 minute or so clip from the final moments, right? And that car passed by and I noticed it in editing and I was like, that is really, really creepy. That's really creepy because it looks like the one that is constantly used in overlay and overlays when it comes to the Linda Lane car and the 7-Eleven car and people trying to figure out if it was actually a Hyundai Elantra or not. Okay. It has that same line in the side and it's just creepy, especially whenever the claw comes down and it like slows way down. I don't know, it was so creepy. But that is it, you guys. If you like this video, please not forget to leave a like on the way out and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. See y'all.